Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on Disney Plus podcast. We're doing a special episode this week where I'm joined by Josh, who also helps write for the website and is also one of the mods of our Facebook group, because we wanted to talk about some of the legacy content that's not available on Disney Plus. We did an episode, I think it was earlier this year, about this situation, and obviously we want to kind of touch base. There's been a lot of talk, especially over social media, of some of the things that haven't been added yet and why they haven't been added. And we kind of wanted to jump into all of that. So, Josh, I just want to say a big thank you for kind of really sort of prompting me to kind of set this one up. So, how have you been? What's kind of the whole situation going on right now that you wanted to kind of talk about?
Oh, well, I've been great. Thank you, Roger. And I do love the site and so appreciate you and James and the team, always giving us such great perspective on what's coming out on Disney Plus. I think some people think that there's little, and there has been, we know, a good bit, in terms of new things, in terms of, especially right now with Mandalorian and the right stuff. It's an exciting time. But I think these issues of the legacy content, whether it's ABC, Muppets, 20th Century Studios, other things that Disney owns, we're not seeing a whole lot of them come out. It's been about 6 or 7 months since we've talked. I think it might have even been pre-COVID pandemic, when we had a conversation about it all. So the world has changed a lot. And, Disney has given us more than we expected, I think, at that point, 6 or 7 months ago. I mean, we got Hamilton, we've gotten a number of things. But, we do want to keep these legacy titles front and center, especially here with the quarterly call coming up November 12th and the Investors Day, December 10th. Those are opportunities for these to be elevated, and I know we'll get further into that.
Yeah. So we're going to start off. One of the things that we were going to do is we're going to do some polls and stuff through Facebook. Probably we'll also probably do it on Twitter, and I might even do one on YouTube. We'll just kind of get a few different feeds of see what people like of some of the shows which you guys want the most. We get lots of requests of what people want, and if you haven't done so and there's a show that you like, make sure you go into the request option within the Disney Plus help and put in the official request, because that's always important as well. But I just wanted to run through some of the most requested ones that, and these are going to be in the poll. So we're going to have Modern Family, Home Improvement, Malcolm in the Middle, Firefly, and Aladdin the series, which was the animated one. I know you've got some other ones that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, Roger. We're also going to have Zorro, the classic Disney adventure series, the Muppet Show, the hit Jim Henson series that ran for 5 seasons. I think one that is one that people love. 5 Mile Creek is an early Disney Channel show, an ensemble drama. Set in Australia, really a fascinating show. Lincoln Heights is from executive producer Kevin Hooks, who we know from The Color of Friendship, really great freeform family drama. And then also Gallivant, a musical comedy that has the songs of Alan Menken. So definitely a very core Disney one there. So yeah, I think we both recognize that sort of TV, it seems, what we call binge-worthy TV, I think is sort of one of the biggest weaknesses of Disney Plus, perhaps. And so I'm excited to see this kind of, this poll and get some energy going around these titles.
Yeah, there's quite a few things. Definitely noticing, obviously, when I do the weekly trending chart on the Sunday mornings, of just, things like The Simpsons just dominating and very, very little moving around. And TV series, I think, are going to sort of be a major factor going into it. So we've got 7 kind of major questions that we kind of want to run through, and we're going to have a discussion on each one. So the first question is there actually anything good still locked away in the vote? And obviously we've listed those 10 shows that we do think there is, but there's still a lot more left to come, though, isn't there?
There is, whether it's musicals or Star Wars or, inspirational biopics, action films with broad appeal, all of these things exist in the Disney Vault, because it's not just Disney brand things. There's Touchstone, there's Hollywood Pictures, things that are PG, things that are family friendly that they produce under different labels. Of course, the 20th Century Studios acquisition has brought in a ton of things as well. There's the Muppets, there's other things, through Lucasfilm, the Star Wars content that's not there. So, the missing Disney list has grown from just 300 titles to now 600, even with sort of 150 titles now on a Star and Hulu list. So we recognize that Disney is doing this where they're going to put this other, kind of mature content on another, sort of hub, as we were going to learn more about in the coming months here, weeks. But, we can't sort of deny these ones that are past from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s. They just kind of seem to have been forgotten. And what's interesting is that people, so is there anything actually good? Well, here's the thing. Netflix, just in the past couple of weeks here, they've had 5 films from 2011, so 9 years ago, that have topped their most watched list. So that was Moneyball, that was Real Steel, which, by the way, is a Disney title. Those were all top here in the US Netflix. And so people are like, oh, there's no value in these older titles. That's not really the truth. If you promote them well, if you get them out to an audience that is interested in them, there absolutely is. So I mean, and we both know, Roger, of course, with the COVID pandemic, that production was halted for many, many months on things that they had planned to put out. And so the legacy content, they're going to have to lean into it. And so this conversation is an important one, I think, for us to have, and for fans to understand what's out there and what's missing.
Well, actually, that's kind of something I definitely wanted to bring up, was the fact of the idea. I think that this COVID is going to have a bit of an issue going on, and I think there's been some problems that were addressed because of COVID, was because now at the minute we're just getting the Mandalorian, we're getting the right stuff, and we're going to have WandaVision. Well, all of those were all filmed back in before everything happened, before around February time, which has now meant that we've now got this massive 6-month window where nothing was being filmed. We know Falcon and the Winter Soldier is currently filming. I just found out this morning that Diary of a Future President is filming its 2nd season this week. Things are moving, but we're going to have that massive 6-month, and I don't think people maybe have understood if they felt like there wasn't a lot of stuff out before, there's going to be we haven't even hit really the drought problem yet. We're going to and I think that is where we're going to see it, is sort of after Christmas till next summer. That's when we're going to have this big lull of content, because suddenly everything that was supposed to be filmed for then hasn't been. And that's where I think the legacy content, I think they hit the pause button, went right, slow it right down. We need this stuff for next year, or we're going to need this stuff if we can't get filming up and running, because they were lucky that they've been able to get filming going. And I think that's because it feels like it's been slowing down week or month on month since then. And November's list, which we saw last week, was probably one of the lightest months. I know there's going to be a few more surprises they normally like to throw in, but I was looking at that, and I know a lot of people are up, and I'm thinking there's a reason why they're pulling this back, was because the Mandalorian is enough to keep the majority of people happy in November. It's going to be January, February when WandaVision's over, and they're going to need, and I think the back catalog is going to be a massive thing to help fill that void.
Yeah, well, you've kind of started to answer question 2, and I'll ask it to you.
Oh.
Which is what we hear a lot. Don't you realize that they can't release everything at once? That's not how streaming services work. They have to save titles for the future. We hear that all the time.
Yeah. I was going to say, because the thing is like, there's a whole other issue of, and I think we're going to find out more with this upcoming Investors Day in the 10th of December. We're going to find out what's happening with Hulu and Disney Plus, and also this new streaming service, Star. And I think that will give us much more clarity of what we could expect in the future of where stuff's going to be going, because ultimately they're going to need to siphon some of these shows off to it. Now, whether or not everything comes under the family banner of Disney, Marvel, etc., goes to Disney Plus and anything and the other one, but it's been very, very messy. It feels like with TV, that seems to be staying with the Star side. It's the movie side which seems to be opening up a little bit more. And there again, if they add all this content to Disney Plus through the back door, either through a tiered service like Star or a Hulu Hub, which was recently mentioned by Bloomberg, suddenly then that changes everything to me. Then it opens up yes, you might have to have 2 subscriptions, or a higher tier and a lower tier, or whatever. But at $6.99 a month, we can't have everything at that price. We just have to be, everyone has to be a little bit really realistic and going, we're not going to get the entire catalog of everything for $6.99. Now, personally, I would prefer one platform with everything and pay double the price. But some people aren't like that, and Disney have found this sweet spot of having 2 cheap options, and maybe if they merge them together, they become one big one on par with Netflix. And I think that's where Disney seems to be going.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we know some of the answer to that question about don't you realize everything can't release at once. We would say, yeah, we realize that, and but I think what we're asking for, really, as you've talked about, is transparency and communication. We realize this is a business. They're going to have to, do their own thing with Star and Hulu, make money off of these services, and have maybe Disney and Star as separate. But there's been talk about how streaming services are supposed to work. There's not been the transparency that other services have. When you look at Netflix, when you look at Amazon, the Home Alone films we know disappeared right after Christmas. But even then, since more recently, as you and James have talked about, Cinderella 2015 just dropped off the service after being there for 2 weeks. Rookie of the Year, you know, and other number of 20th century titles. It's the kind of thing where if subscribers knew they were leaving, they would have, of course, queued it up, watched it, you know, just as they know every month from Netflix or Amazon, there's a here's what's leaving, here's what's coming list. So, you know, if a title has to leave the service temporarily, then just announce that in advance so that then, you know, and when it's perhaps expected to be back, that would be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's like it comes into an entirely different like problem that's going on with Disney Plus of the transparency of things leaving and when they're going to be coming back. And I do think why they, you know, we can have the little yellow warning telling us when it's coming. Why can't we have one saying when it's expiring? If it, or you know, only flags up maybe in the last 30 days, or I understand not having a leaving section because if you're only having maybe one title every couple of months going, you don't need a whole section to draw attention to it. You know, it's not like HBO or Hulu where we have a massive list of 30 to 40 to 50 movies that are going every month. You know, if we're talking like one movie, I'll be honest, even I'm going, yeah, you don't need a whole section, but you just need that little thing there to warn people. You know, something like Cinderella. To do that, to put it on there and make all that fuss and remove it within a few weeks was like, whoa, that's a bit cheap. That's like you've got a legal right to put it on there. Why, you know, that felt a little bit low.
Yeah,
but I do think that
it diminishes the trust that people have in the service. And so, you know, that's the ask that we're making here, is to say, hey, announce another list of 100 titles. They gave us that 100 titles of legacy films when at launch they said, hey, these 100 are on other services. We're going to put them out now over the next few years, and those all have dates in the service. Give us another list of 100, whether that's at the quarterly report, probably more likely at the Investors Day. But I would hope that is something that is you know, something that they really go for, because that would show us transparency. It would show us the kind of communication we want to see.
I mean, I think we're at a point with some of the legacy content where I would say the bulk of the mainstream Disney side of things have been covered. Most of the movies, there's some that are missing. It's mainly on the TV side, but also there's lots of National Geographic shows, Disney Channel shows that are missing. And I think that is where we have to, you know, there's like, you know, there's that thing of, yeah, you're expecting stuff to be spread out a little bit, but I think it's going to be the 20th Century Studios sort of back catalogue that they're really going to start drip feeding stuff in. Well, because that's a massive area of family films.
Yeah, that is an emphasis they're going to have, and I know we'll get a little bit deeper into that as we go along. But you know, I think I guess we can go to number 3 here if you like.
Well, before we do, I just want to just jump just a little bit back on the other reason of why things aren't coming on is these existing contracts.
Right.
You know, with HBO Max, we've got Netflix has a few. I mean, we've recently, like the Muppets Most Wanted went onto Netflix, but it didn't leave, so it's like it doesn't look like it's exclusive. That's some of the issues. Some of them primarily, I'll be honest, seems to be like US, but like even over here in the UK, for example, you know, you guys got The Greatest Showman back in August. It didn't arrive here.
Yeah.
But it was on like Channel 4, like literally last night. So, you know, maybe they had limited access to it. Again, it's this kind of weird thing of like, you know, do we want them to put it in there and just say like, this is what the date that's coming? But in other words, it doesn't drive a lot of buzz. You know, I think this is kind of thing as well of like when they load up a movie, so like Ford versus Ferrari is now available on Disney Plus in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. So
great.
If you just, I haven't seen this one on one of the ones that I want to watch it, but that one there, and like we've had Call of the Wild and also Spies in Disguise. So those come up. If you do a search for it, it will bring them up and show them that they're in Disney Plus for you. So you then click on it, it says it's not available in your region. Well, if it would say when you clicked on it, this is the date that it's coming, it would take it away. I don't know. It's just a little bit more transparency. I know the US has got it much worse than over here. You know, all those titles that were on Netflix, we had straight away. You know, I know like when I put up the list all the time, especially like Europeans and Australians and stuff like that, well, we've got half of these movies. There's not a lot on the list. It's because, yeah, well, you know, there is all these different movies that we don't have that issue with. And like in December, you've got Wreck-It Ralph and the Nutcracker, and then you've got Mary Poppins Returns. We don't have that problem. They've been here since Disney Plus launched back in March. So again, they're going, okay. And like over in the US, you know, they've been making a big deal of all the X-Men. We had all them. We had them So it's kind of a weird one. Australia definitely seems to have the best lineup still by the looks of it.
Yeah, well, I'll just say something for some of the fans who are listening, which is that, I do love the older stuff that Walt Disney himself was involved in the 50s and in the early 60s. And so I do think there are really dozens of titles that Walt himself was involved in that are not there and don't seem to have any issues of cultural depictions, etc.
Yeah,
And
it's funny.
and so
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that exact same thing about the cultural and the thing. They've just literally last week added this brand new. They've got a brand new committee and council where they brought in lots of different organizations of charities, and they're now putting these warnings on before movies and TV series about if there's something in it that's not maybe culturally appropriate now, or it's I'm just in bad taste now. And to me, the minute I saw this, it was like, that just gives them the biggest way of really expanding that legacy content, which really I don't know if they had. It was, because I'd love to see all the wartime footage of the stuff, and it's it's completely daft and bonkers to look back on it now, but it's I'd like it to be there. And that legacy, that option does give us a chance.
Well, and there's a lot of titles that, frankly, maybe somebody in some corporate suite in Disney thought that they were offensive. But, a title like The Great Locomotive Chase, which deals with, now that's, of course, the American Civil War, and it deals with a Union Army regiment that's going in to do an operation against the Confederacy and blow up their supply lines, etc. It's a fascinating story. It's a very well-done drama. Maybe because it touches on war, they just thought, okay, this is too controversial. We don't want to touch war kind of stuff. But, there are a number of titles like that where it's simply, a great story of heroism that is being portrayed and that Walt really put his heart and soul into. I mean, the Midwest premiere of that film was held in his hometown of Marceline, Missouri. And so it's it's kind of a very core thing to some of the older Disney fans.
Yeah, I'm really thinking with having the council of, I think it's over a dozen different charities and stuff involved. I think that will really help and be much more clarity, and they can look, they're looking at it from different angles and from different things, and that's right. I mean, I am completely on it. That is such the right move, but also not removing it. The Disney has this folk content, and I do think that option will help with, especially with maybe the 30s, 40s, and 50s stuff, and some of the stuff in the 60s, because probably most, even just down to smoking and just maybe some of the language used wouldn't fly now, and therefore they've got that extra level of sort of warning. I mean, it's that thing of it. Everyone's got different opinions of whether or not it should be there or not, but ultimately, right now, Disney are kind of covering themselves with this new council to kind of offer that, and I do think it's a good idea. I think it's a way of providing content and stuff. There are going to be some titles which Disney are just not going to want to go near with a barge pole, and I understand that, and I get it from a business point of view, and I get it from a PR point of view. And it's just along the lines of, it's just some titles are just not really possible to bring out.
Yeah, but I think it's probably in the realm of 5% of these titles. It's not, the bulk of them for people to understand. You actually jump to the issue of streaming contracts, which is an important issue, kind of number 4 there. So let's dive into that a little bit more, because people say, okay, that's the biggest reason, of course, why all these aren't there. And if you look at this list of 600 titles that are missing on Disney Plus, about 20% of them maybe are on another streaming service. And so HBO is one of the biggest. Not only is there a contract between HBO and 20th Century that is causing all kinds of issues like the Ford and Ferrari issue where we can't get it in the US, but also there's a contract between Disney and HBO. And that was, I think, dating back to 2010. And so that's another reason why titles like Jungle Book and Pacifier and certain other ones are not there. And so, and then there's also Cinemax. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in because Jungle Book did actually jump forward a year. There seemed to be a deal that was done, and a load of movies that were supposed to be coming next year. There was a reshuffle of dates, and the Jungle Book pushed forward nearly a whole year. So they've been doing stuff, and whether or not they will try and get out, but that in some ways, COVID has kind of given them a perfect way of, especially with that HBO with the 20th Century Studios movies, they've kind of essentially got a 6 months to a year whipped out of that contract without them actually having to do very much.
Yeah, well, you bring up there Jungle Book, Jon Favreau's more recent live action version there. I was referring to the 1994
All right.
Jungle Book. It's another live action, and it's a great film. It's got Carrie Ells. It's got a great cast of actors, and a lot of people consider it one of the better remakes. But it's also kind of lost at this point. It's on HBO Max. So, I think part of the issue too is that it's not just those existing contracts with HBO and with Cinemax and with Stars, but Disney has actually been initiating new contracts with rival services in the midst of still saying that Disney Plus is their priority. And that's a real issue. No one's really talking about that. I mean, there was the issue of ABC shows such as Malcolm in the Middle going to IMDb TV, that free service. There are some other aspects, titles with very broad appeal. They've been pushing to other services. So right now, Real Steel is on Netflix. It was actually a top 10 title, here recently. Great show. It's a great film with Hugh Jackman in it. It's a family film. It's a natural fit for Disney Plus. Lincoln.
It's funny because that one was on Disney Life. I'm just going to have a look to see if it's on the UK version, because I do remember seeing that one come up. But also, for example, like over here with the contracts, it's the same thing, because like Stars has got access to, it's not on over here. It was on, so it got removed. Like High Fidelity and a lot of the Hulu stuff has been sort of jumping around between sort of Amazon, Stars and BBC, and I think it's because until they got Star, they're just making some money. And I think that's where, especially around with some of their stuff right now, they're wanting to, I'm just going to get the sun up. They want to make money, because ultimately they need money coming in. And I think they probably looked at Malcolm in the Middle. They got offered so much money for some content. They've given it to them. It might not even be an exclusive deal. They might be holding. It's always this kind of thing of they're ultimately looking for money. While they want everything on there, I think things might change following last week's announcement that streaming is now the major core thing. I think, we are probably going to see contracts purchased and brought out, but also maybe that's just not going to happen so much in the future now that they've made it their priority.
Yeah, I hope that's the case, because I'll just say even last month here in the U.S., Lincoln. Great film by Steven Spielberg, amazing political drama, moved to Amazon Prime. That's a film that Disney could put out on Disney Plus. The Man from Snowy River, 20th century title that is very popular, has Kirk Douglas, went to Hallmark and their streaming service. So, other contracts are a problem. People are right about that issue, but, no question of that. But they're also initiating new ones. So let's be aware of that. And also 80% of this list is not released for reasons unknown. They're not on any service, and they've been given no release date. And so it's not like we expect everything to come on yesterday, but hey, can you chart it out for the next 5 years?
I do have some ideas of why some of this stuff might not necessarily be available. Some of it could be down to quality. Are the prints, are they of good enough quality for HD? Do they have to do some work on them? Do they have them, have they then got to add, for example, subtitles and audio descriptions, and also then add dubbing and things like that, which ultimately could all cost extra money to do, and they've got to allocate it. COVID as well has probably no doubt as well had an issue where maybe they had planned to do some stuff over the last 6 months and they haven't been able to get all of that together because the teams haven't been able to work. There's this kind of argument. There's lots of reasons what it could be, and I wouldn't necessarily expect them to come out and be open about what it was, but I think it's important that people realize that there's more than just one issue. There could be 25 different reasons of different things. Another issue could be, of like money, because some of those older shows, they maybe didn't have streaming rights, or they didn't have it included, or resale, being able to watch it again, and therefore the actors want more money, and whether or not they think it's worth it. There's lots of old contracts like that of where they make money on the reruns and all the rest of it, and especially with TV series, and they've got to sort all that out, and whether or not they think it's financially work. These are things that are so complicated that there's not like we're going to have a single list with every single reason, or this isn't on there because of that.
It's true, and that's a fair point. And I think I think that there's an emphasis on the list on Disney films that Disney produced, because we know that they have the full rights to those. So that's why we try to lean on those, because if they filmed them, they released them in theaters, etc. They have all those rights. We don't, you're right. The TV shows can be more complicated, but there's still a lot of mystery about this. Maybe
I was just going to say as well, there's also sometimes some differences internationally. For example, like The Princess Bride was distributed by 20th Century Studios in the US, but internationally it was by another company. Titanic, for me, is a Fox movie. Terminator, the latest Terminator movie, is a Fox movie. So therefore, but in the US, these are held by different ones. The BFG is available in the US because there was a DreamWorks deal, but here in the UK, no, it's not on there. It's not part of the deal. So there are also some international deals of things that kind of kick in as well.
Yep. Well, I think you made some great points for sure. Let me just mention again that some stats regarding what is missing, because I think people are not always aware. Because they think, okay, going to number 3 here, but why all this focus on what hasn't released? Disney does put new things out every Friday. That's true. But if you look at the bulk of them, you and I have been tracking this really closely. We watch this stuff every week as it comes out. Most of that is National Geographic stuff, and occasionally a Disney Channel thing that comes out. When you look at legacy stuff, especially stuff that was before 2000, it's not the core Disney brand stuff. I mean, there's only been, this is a really interesting stat. One, if you look at Disney theatrical releases, all those that have been put out, there's only been one prior to 1990 that has been put on the service, and that's the Moon Spinners. So they haven't added even one theatrical Disney film, since launch on November 12th of last year to this service. If you look at pre-1990. So that's, to people who care about the legacy of the company, it really kind of feels like a slap in the face.
Well, there's kind of like a couple of different things in there. So first off, let's talk about the older content, which I don't know it does seem very strange. They don't seem to be focusing on that bit. I know we get a lot of comments and stuff with people talking about how stuff that they grew up is not on there. But again, it's almost like Disney have worked out that they're not the demographic, and therefore they're not going after them. They're going after sort of 20, 30 somethings and their like memories and what they watched, rather than going after like 50, 60, 70-year-olds of what they want. And I do think there's an element of they've streamlined it, and there might be those other issues I've said earlier, but I suspect we are going to start seeing this stuff rolling out. And suddenly there might just be like, okay, you're in charge of this. The project start rolling through and releasing stuff. And I think especially when you start getting into the 20th Century Studios things, there's so many black and white movies, so many stuff from the early days, which could really bulk out what they're offering. And it depends on how they, if they roll them out, week to week, or another way is like, maybe they're holding stuff back so they can kind of go, oh yeah, by the way, we're putting the price up to, a couple of dollars, but here's suddenly now an extra 200 titles or something like that. I don't know. It's definitely strange.
I'm all in for that if that's what they want to do. So, and I'll just say, I think that what you've raised there is an important point regarding why fans should speak up. They should certainly put the request into the app, but they should also, share things like this, where we're openly discussing some of the missing titles and the legacy issues that Disney has, because, Disney is a company that responds to feedback. The reason they have, of course, the world's most acclaimed cruise line and the world's most, acclaimed theme parks, both of which, of course, have been in trouble this year. But the reason they have that is because they responded to fan feedback, and so they heard from fans. They were critical fans sometimes, and they made changes. And so in this case, if this is really these titles that people demand and care about, then they should mention them on the forums. They should mention them, in the app requests certainly. And Disney's gonna be able to respond to that and realize, okay, there is actually demand for this. So I think that feedback loop, we shouldn't be kind of having this thumper policy, of like, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. You get that sometimes, and people who are just, oh, we can't say anything against Disney. Like, oh, we appreciate the service, but there are some real issues here.
Yeah, I think there's that thing as well. If like, what I would is, there's a difference between constructive criticism and it's like here now of like, we're talking about it, at the end of the day, we're not, it's not a case of being upset with anyone or demanding anything like that. We're just, it's just a conversation about it. What, if a new movie doesn't arrive on there for 2 years because they've got a rollout plan, I'm fine with that. I think that's where we've got to look into it. Have they got a roll? Have they just got a list of movies and TV series, and they've already pre-planned when everything's dropping, and they're just stretching it out? And COVID has hit that, but there is just the thing is, I think for me, and I'm hoping we get this addressed going forward, is the speed of which the stuff that's arriving on National Geographic and Disney Channel arrives on Disney Plus. I'd like that speeded up, but that's more the current content. But National Geographic has got a long line of history, but a lot of it is it scientifically correct anymore? That's another issue. Again, is it up to the quality standards of what they want? I don't know. Disney Channel is one of those strange things as well. I think the majority of their stuff has been on there, but there's a lot of TV shows, and I'll be honest, we do get asked probably daily about some of the ones. Where's, every time I put up a new video or a new blog post, it's like, where's Dog on the Blog? Where's House of Villains? Where's Wander Over Yonder? There's a load of TV series that kids grow up on that they haven't got access to. That again, we don't know why, and especially last year, because when they first launched, the Disney Plus help was like replying to people going, yes, it's coming, yes, it's coming, yes, it's coming. And here we are nearly a year later and we still haven't got them. And because people are going, well, you said it was coming. It's like, yeah, but they did. It wasn't me. I didn't say it. It was like they'd said it, and they didn't really expect it to come take as long as it did.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very well stated.
But yeah, it's all very kind of, I think, a thing of really of what's of, we're just going to keep an eye on it and just and also as well, I do see just a lot of where people will then comment on posts. So if, here's a picture of the new Mickey Mouse series, and then a load of people going, where's this, where's this, where's this, where's this, where's this? And then like, I sometimes go, well, they're probably not even seeing this stuff because there's so many comments and so on. But every single time something goes up of like, here's what's coming in November, there'll be a load of people asking for everything that wasn't announced. I personally wish they would get more. I'd love that to be like a kind of a system of like there is going to be at least one movie a week. There's got to be a few, even with the 20th Century Studio stuff with it, they've probably sat on a back catalogue of 500 plus movies. They're not all going to be great ones. I'll be honest. This week in Canada they're getting Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. That would be that. Obviously, again, it comes down to streaming rights, or just giving us at least one movie a week, or even like with the older stuff, you give us two. If it's something from the 1940s or 1950s, I can see why it's not necessarily it's not going to bring subscribers in, and that is a key issue as well, which I do want to get into.
It is. It's a very key issue. I think that you're bringing up some great points. I think that if it was a movie a week, and if it was a binge-worthy TV show every month, which they have a great catalog of those, that would really, even that kind of pace would help it. Because we kind of saw basically a pace of a few of these a month, and then in August, it just kind of fizzled out in terms of stuff from the 50s and 60s that they were putting out in terms of the legacy titles. So, if those of us who are tracking it, we're kind of like, okay, where did all of a sudden any focus on, what the titles that we care about, actually there. So.
Yeah, I still think there's some issues with COVID. I still think there is probably some logistical stuff of maybe them not being able to get into the, essentially, California is still under, work from home, and, they're not in the offices, they're not in so that is probably having a massive impact on what is available, why everything is slowing down as we're moving along. That's
a good point. Well, we're kind of coming to the last few questions here in terms of what we have on the list.
So what's your on the next question here? So we go. Does anyone in the media or among shows creators really care about what's missing on Disney Plus? Yeah, I was going to say it definitely seems to be more so with the Disney Channel creators. They seem to be much more like shouting for their stuff to be available. They're much more. I've seen that a lot more. National Geographic is very different, and it's just weird with National Geographic because you have these movies come out and they, the amount of times they will announce something, a brand new documentary, and going, is it coming across? Oh, we don't know yet. It's like, yeah, you guys still haven't organized all this yet, have you? It's just like rebuilding paradise. Going, well, why is this not day and date? Why is that? You're not really utilizing it. Hopefully that will change, but I do think the Disney Channel creators of the shows that aren't on there are a little bit more active.
Yeah, I think you're right. For instance, DuckTales, the creators of those guys, they've been very active in getting that, for instance, fixed and the order of it and all that, which was tremendous to see. it got into the correct order, which it wasn't. That's still a big issue in and of itself. But something that's encouraged me on this front about, does anybody in the media or other show creators care about what's missing? We actually have seen some other people raise their voices on this. So there have been some major stories that have been put out in other outlets. So Variety put out a major story about the show Once and Again, which is a show from the early 2000s. Very fascinating conversation where this writer, a senior editor over there, went through several channels and tried to figure out, why is this not available on streaming anywhere? This is an ABC show. It stars some really, popular actors who have now gone on to big things. Can't we get this on? And so, that's one example of that. You had a show called, or rather a film called Cocoon. That's a Ron Howard film from the early 80s. There was an actor, Wilfred Brumley, who passed away. And he was a major part of that film. People, Ron Howard himself was sharing the clip from that film and saying this is an amazing family film, and it's not available anywhere, not even for sale on Amazon. And they, the writer who literally went through 8 or 10 contacts connected to the film to try to figure out why this is not streaming anywhere, he ultimately landed on somebody who, said, hey, well, there's a music issue for one of the songs that's in it, and that's why, right now it's not anywhere. So there's a little bit of understanding of that, but there are these are, and then of course Brandy, the actress Brandy Norwood, who starred in the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella for ABC and Disney back in the 90s. She was asked at a recent event, hey, where's why isn't Cinderella with Whitney Houston and you on Disney Plus yet? And she's like, I don't know, I'd love for it to be there. And so it's great to see people raise that question, not just us, but actually other media people raising this up.
Yeah, I definitely think music seems to be one of the core issues. The trouble is, again, it's like, how long was the license for? How have they got to pay for it? Is it easy to edit out? I mean, so, the trouble is, people are very much like, you've changed the music and all that. Well, for example, like in wrestling, we get that a lot. We used to get that a lot with some of the older stuff where the licenses, so they something like dub over a completely different entrance music, and we're just getting more and more used to it. I mean, literally, and I'm not kidding, I put up a video today on Facebook, just on the things of my dog, and I had the radio on, and it got flagged as it had music in, and that's just me just putting up a 20-second clip of my dog in the garden, and it got flagged for music because of the radio. And I mean, that's just something basic. So let alone maybe, maybe like you say, this, if they don't own the rights to that music, or it's such a complicated issue of why things might not be there.
It is, but I think it can be solved. Here in the U.S., the service Peacock that NBC and Universal have put out, it's just kind of exploded. Actually, it's been a massive, massive hit. It's, I think, in the realm of now 30 million plus. It's a free service, so it's very quickly catapulted among the different streaming services. But they actually have recently, just in the last couple of weeks, put out every single Saturday Night Live episode that's ever existed on that. And what they did was they ended up cutting music from several episodes. I think even, maybe even the majority of episodes, they had to cut one song at least from it, because they're like, it would be too expensive for us to get the rights, etc. I think, that would be gold for fans of the Muppet Show if they had to take out a song or two from certain episodes and say, okay, we're going to put it out, even though we have to take stuff out. Fans would be enthralled about that. So, Disney just needs to think a little bit creatively and outside the box, maybe, if the music rights is what's causing them.
I mean, you can only even look at the last year, and we had the Disney Summer Sing-Along, we had the Winter Christmas Sing-Along thing in front of the castle, and we've also the Taylor Swift concert. All of them were gone really quick. They weren't on there very long, very short. So music definitely seems to be something that isn't, unless it's like a movie where they I think like the Coco celebration. I think that's safe, but music does seem to be an issue of why. And again, they've got to get that balance right of what they're doing with it.
I'll mention one more thing concerning music, but also about show creators. The stars and the producers of the show Gallivant have really gotten, on social media in a big way to say, Disney Plus, why isn't this here? It's gone off of Hulu. Is this going to release? I think they actually might be prepping that to maybe put out in Investors Day. That could be one of them. I mean, these are Alan Menken songs. Yeah. They own this stuff. But, it is interesting that it's not just us talking about the missing titles. It is a host of people, including the show creators, who are saying, hey, why isn't this there? So
we're going to move on there. So with all these issues going on, we look at it and go, has Disney Plus made progress in the last sort of 6 months to a year? What do you think?
And I think they have. There were some surprises along the way here. For instance, you mentioned the 20th Century Catalog. They did that summer movie nights promotion here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think it was worldwide. But regardless, those with the X-Men films that came out, really a dozen or so different Fox films, including The Greatest Showman, which was a major addition right on the heels of Hamilton, really established them as kind of a destination, I think, for movie musicals. And there's been other library titles that they've really learned, hey, we can create buzz with this. So that you mentioned The Princess Bride. Here in the U.S., maybe it's something you can pull into this in terms of a clip, but they did this really fun Twitter video clip that they did between the two actors and talked about, oh, this is coming on Disney Plus, Carrie Ells and the other star. And so, as well, Once Upon a Time, has finally come out. It was promised at launch, and it's finally released. And they've even said they're going to put out Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. So they're going to complete that whole franchise and have that whole thing up. That's a great binge-worthy show. So there have been certainly some improvements here. There's also, of course, we know Mandalorian season 2. There's The Right Stuff now that's out. There's even two shows that are coming. We've heard, we just haven't seen a date yet for them. But Dinosaurs is a legacy show that is ABC that Disney said is going to come out. I don't know if that's going to be November or December, but we're going to see a surprise announcement on that, I'm sure, soon. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. we know will ultimately be on the service as well here in the U.S., just like it is there in the U.K. So we're waiting. We know that there's a Netflix contract. Maybe they'll cut that contract. I think they very well might. But that's of course why those two shows aren't on the list of 10, because we know they're already coming. So
like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're getting season 7 because we actually didn't even get that over on TV here. They held on to it. So that'll be dropping in November because, again, they didn't have that deal with Netflix, and that's what the issue is with the US. But I think there's been a lot of good step forwards. There has been some step backs, but basically, at the minute, the whole world has kind of had to take a few steps back and change. Very few things have, and it's that kind of thing of like, giving them a pass for it. But it's like, well, you have to look at it from both sides and go, yeah, there is some logistic reasons of why some things probably have slowed down, and you can see that trickle effect seems to have kind of each month to month to month as things were coming along of how it was working out. The Princess Bride, I remember they made quite a big fuss over that coming. We then had like Ant Farm. They made a bit of they did something similar for that, where one of the stars kind of jumped on social media and kind of was like, yay, it's coming. But there hasn't really been as much of that. And there's quite a few shows and stuff that are coming up that I would like them to come up, but I feel like we're almost in that weird bit where it's like they've got to get everyone ready for the news. They're going to try and get everyone to sign up for another year. In November, I think everyone was expecting a bigger hit. They've still got some more things to go yet. But I think once we get a clearer idea of what their strategy is, because it feels like the strategy from last April, nearly 18 months ago, by the time this Investor Day comes around, 18 months has completely think of what has changed in 18 months for Disney Plus. It's now like it's huge.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, that leads us to our last question, which is, I'm curious to ask you this, even as I'll give a little bit of perspective on it, but what is your outlook for the release of Disney legacy films and shows here in the coming months? And, I think that there are positive signs that they really do, that they're going to make this a focus moving forward. I think you're probably right that there have been some COVID-related reasons why we haven't seen as much of the legacy stuff come out of the vault as we would like to. They have their quarterly call on November 12th. We're going to maybe hear some things, probably not too much about legacy, I don't think, probably at the 1 year mark.
I jump in there. To be honest, this is not only is it just the quarterly results, but it's the whole annual results. And with the whole, Disney just having a dreadful year with the studios down, the theme parks closed, the stores closed, not just the water parks, but also the cruise line. So they will probably push Disney Plus as being something that they're at least making money on, and it's been very successful. But there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of bad publicity around. And I feel in some way, some of this, like, I think Disney Plus, while it's going to be a push forward, they are really just going to be in damage control mode of how much of the parks are losing. And ultimately, it's just such a big issue that I think that I'm not expecting a huge amount out of that event.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. On the front of damage control, they probably will then lead into Disney Plus in a big way and talk about Mandalorian and its success, which would have come out just a few days before, 2 weeks before, essentially. that second season and how much buzz it's getting. That hopefully they'll have some positive things to say about Right Stuff, because we obviously want to see a second season. We hope that people are watching it. But I think I see honestly the 1 year anniversary as a big opportunity for fans to raise these issues now, and for media to kind of let's make some groundwork with some key media who are Disney people to say, hey, why haven't these legacy titles been released? I don't want to continue the bad news, but let's kind of raise this issue of, hey, you have these incredible valuable content. This phenomenal library. Easily, like I say, 80% of this list of 600 is not on the service and is not on another streaming service. So you're really missing some of the value you could be adding to your service by not doing it. And it's got to be emphasized. But then December 10th will be an even bigger opportunity.
Yeah, and I think like data that they've had over the past to show what's popular, what isn't. It did seem very noticeable that every single time they did that weekly release of a summer movie, they were getting that one was kind of hitting in the trending, and people were watching it and talking about it. I think we will see that continue to be just the way that they reorganized all of because the legacy content that was coming to Disney Plus over the last, or in the 2 years after it launched, all the dates shifted, because at one point they were all just random weird dates of obviously when the contract was available, and that's what they were doing at the start. And then suddenly, then around about, I don't know when it was, at a certain point, everything shifted to a Friday, and the concentration was on Fridays. But more importantly, they then started stretching them out to one a week.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I'm putting together like December's, or I'll be starting work soon on January one, you generally see that they've reorganized them all so they all drop weekly, and I think it's a smart move, and I think we'll still continue to get that, but we'll have a better idea, because there's a load of movies that they announced at last year's Investors Day and that still haven't arrived yet.
Well, yeah, it was a list of 77, and there's now, I think it's a list of maybe 30 or 35, and so that have not released yet. So it is dwindling, and I would just hope that we would get another, whole list then of 100 plus, films that would say, hey, we're going to put these out. Here's the dates. We're going to stretch these out, because December 10th, Investors Day, I think Star and the launch of that service is causing them to look obviously very closely at the 20th Century Library. And I would hope that would mean, okay, we're seeing now the value of that library, the Die Hard, franchise, the Alien franchise, the Planet of the Apes, etc., all that they've got there. Maybe we've missed some things in our own library and the value that it could bring to this service, that they've, that's why I think we wanted to put out that list of franchises that are missing, because there are a number of them that are, beloved by a lot of people and still missing from Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how all that works, because Hulu's going to go through some massive changes in the coming years ahead. Once it's dealt with the Comcast, and you got to look at it in a few years' time, it's going to lose all of that NBC content and all these movies that are dropping on and dropping off. Hulu is essentially going to become a hub for all of this content. They got to try and sort it out, but they've got. I mean, I think that's in some ways, had Hulu not existed, it would have been a very different story. But things are moving, things are getting more mature. They've been, some of the movies that they put on recently, like Fault in Our Stars and Hidden Figures, are very much bigger movies, a lot, and so a little bit more better than what we've been sort of seeing recently.
I very much agree. And I think I think we're going to see some great news, honestly, at the December 10th event. I think they'll probably say, hopefully, that the HBO contract is being bought out. Hopefully, maybe that the Netflix contract is being bought out so that they can, put Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. finally on in the U.S. But it could be, honestly, that some of the media coverage that happens around November 12th and that 1 year mark is going to determine how much maybe legacy titles play into the December 10th event. So, I would just encourage people to raise that issue if they have contacts, but to be putting the word out. And I think this poll even that we've put out, hey, putting your vote out there to say what are these top 10 shows is of interest to you to see out there. That's going to be an interesting thing. If we get thousands and thousands of people to release that, that's going to give a little bit of a data point on, hey, there is actually demand for some of these titles.
Yeah, so on that note, we are going to, like I said, we're going to put up some polls and stuff on our social media. We'll be doing we're always constantly kind of keeping up with what's missing and kind of adjusting our big list. Josh does a fantastic job of updating that pretty much every month. of kind of what's been added. And unfortunately, like I said, there's just not really been much added. So some months you can kind of take a few off, but recently it's kind of slowed down. But we are keeping an eye on it. We are looking at it. We are listening to you. We get lots and lots of notes and people come through. So I did want to give a big shout out to Drew on Twitter. He's constantly really kind of pushing on what isn't on there and sort of why isn't it, and generally and stuff like that. Just go on to that help, put that submit the form in, and just kind of keep doing this. But also, you do it respectfully, do it, so and then that's the key thing. You ask politely. that's the key one. But again, Josh, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Josh M. Shep. You can certainly find me there. My work is there. I write for a number of outlets, including What's on Disney Plus, which is great. So I'm a fan like everyone, but also try to bring some journalism to our work as well. So appreciate what you're doing, Roger. And I think you're such a source to folks around the world, frankly, who want to understand this service and how it's growing. It's like this is the big story of 2020, and this site is right at the center of it. So.
Yes. Yeah, I'll be honest. It's one of those things of like, when I sit down to work out how many hours a day I do, it's like, it's like, but no, I do, like I said, we do listen to what everything's going on. I do read all of your comments on social and YouTube and stuff. And yeah, I know which ones everyone's asking for, and I know a lot. I tend to get them directed to me, but I will always say to people, just make sure you put in their requests through the little help section within the app to make sure you put in a request for what you want to see added to Disney Plus that isn't already on there. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us for this special bonus episode. Love to hear your thoughts on what you think's missing and what you think they could do to fix it. Love to hear your thoughts. Remember to go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. And we shall see you guys in another episode. Laters.